This video was partially inspired by Ezio's comment on a video of mine. Thanks, Ezio. One of the biggest gripes you can find online about modern-day comics is that creators are making new, diverse characters that take up the mantle of long-standing white and/or male characters. Really, the way this is talked about, you would think it was the single worst thing about comics. Miss America, Miss Marvel, Captain America, Iron Man, Ghost Rider, Kid Flash, Huntress, Spider-Man, Superman, Nick Fury, Green Lantern, all of these superhero identities and more received new characters taking up the mantle within the last 20 years, and all of them have been met with complaints. People will say that introducing these characters is an erasure of history, or a case of political correctness gone wild. But you'll also see the argument that they don't mind if you introduce a new character of color, just make it a new character with a new title. And that is, in some ways, fair. Original ideas for characters of color by creators of color have been successful and profitable, and would likely get at least some support, though not always. However, this argument still comes with what is either a double standard or a naivety. White characters take up old mantles all of the time, and are never complained about like this. The Silver Age itself was partially structured upon reviving familiar superhero names and concepts with new individuals under the masks. Barry Allen was the second Flash, Hal Jordan was the second Green Lantern, Johnny Storm was the second Human Torch, and Warren Worthington III was the second Angel. The list goes on, and the old greats used this trick because it worked. Fun fact, Jack Kirby also rebooted his own character, Mr. Miracle, to be a black man, Shiloh Norman. And in more recent years, you'll see white characters adopt these legacy titles and not get crap about it. Bucky Barnes wore the cap suit before Sam Wilson. Carol Danvers took the Captain Marvel name after it had been used by Monica Rambeau. The Green Lantern Corps has hundreds of members, yet one being Arab American was apparently too unrealistic. The passing of the cowl has always been an accepted aspect of American superhero comics. The only difference between when the Silver Age did it and today is that more creators and consumers of comics are people of color, and thus, as Write What You Know remains true, we see more diverse superhero lineups. Look, if you're a complete purist and you hate every Flash that isn't Jay Garrick and every Green Lantern that isn't Alan Scott, I'll believe that you just want to maintain a rigid status quo. But if you were quiet about Danvers getting the Captain Marvel title, and are upset about Kamala Khan getting the Miss Marvel title, you've got a double standard problem. But why? I recognize that most people probably are, at least consciously, fine with having characters of color being their comics. While I do think that there are those that are extremely racist and hate seeing non-white people be good guys, I bet that they're not everybody. But I think there is still a racial bias that exists in the audience that hates Wallace West but loves Bart Allen. Change can be uncomfortable, and that includes change in physical appearance. Look how people react when the same heroes just change an aspect of their costume. For that reason, I think there are people who see the change of skin color to be more of a change than when a white character takes up the role. This is not in any sense of the word justification, but it might be reasoning. Any deviation from the norm is resisted, and a change from Hal Jordan to Guy Gardner to a white man might seem less drastic than a change to Jon Stewart. Like I said, this is still racist, but it might be unintentional. If you're a hater of characters like Danielle and Emiko, but not Stephanie and Jack, first of all, thanks for watching this long. But second of all, the next time you get outraged at a new person of color taking the name of an originally white hero, stop and think for a second. Realism obviously isn't a necessity in American comics, but the familiar is needed to ground the extraordinary, and thus we get human struggles for superhuman characters. With the desire to accurately portray the world, artists that maintain homogeneous skin tones are failing. Neil Adams, the co-creator of Jon Stewart, once said, "We ought to have a black Green Lantern, not because we're liberals, but because it just makes sense." And then on the other hand, Robbie Reyes wasn't just Marvel trying to diversify its lineup. Writer and artist Felipe Smith, an Argentinian Jamaican American, was incorporating his experiences in LA with the racing community to draw out a more relatable and organic Ghost Rider for modern readers. much like Johnny Blaze turned the Old West cowboy Ghost Rider into a stuntmaster/bad boy of the 70s. These changes aren't cheap grabs of diversity points, whatever that means. They're diverse artists drawing from their backgrounds to create unique characters that comics have never seen before. And it's oftentimes that these characters are really good. The complaint of forced diversity is one based on a faulty premise, that white is default. You don't hear people complain that Coulson has become the leader of S.H.I.E.L.D. in the MCU. The idea that characters are created as white, and then are warped to attract audiences of color is not only cynical, it's insulting. And these audiences love Tim Drake, but hate Riri Williams. Now, before you tell me, I know that tokenism is a problem. Adding a character of color to your work to deflect claims of racism is patronizing and exploitative, and characters written this way are often chock full of stereotypes, and are written initially as white characters whose scenes become offensive when they're carried out by people of color. But can you say that for any of the characters I've mentioned today? Val Zod and Jessica Cruz aren't stereotypes or tokens, they're actual characters. And no matter how much you call them pointless or forced, they're better than you think. Of course, over time these characters eventually grow to be accepted, eventually embedding themselves in the status quo, and being defended with the same fervor and by the same people that called them an erasure of it. Jon Stewart and Miles Morales, for example, are favorites today, after years of great writing and also excellent animated appearances. But don't let anyone tell you that these characters, and their creators, and their early fans, weren't subject to a ton of harassment from the same people who are crying about Kamala Khan or Riri Williams. Before I wrap up, there are two characters that have somehow faced relatively less racism and complaint than others. Damian Wayne, the fifth Robin, and Cassandra Cain, the third Batgirl. So why these two? Are Bat Family fans in general less racist than others? I mean, probably not. Duke Thomas has gotten tons of hate, and he wasn't even taking up another character's mask. No, I think Damian and Cassandra were accepted for a couple of reasons. One, they are both biracial, and are often drawn as white passing, sometimes to the point where I question if the artists know they were drawing biracial characters. Two, they were created by established writers that already had decently sized fan bases. 3, they were the children of an established beloved character, or 2 in Damian's case. And 4, they were not the first characters to adopt the titles that they took. Jason Todd and Barbara Gordon had already borne the brunt of the blame for the departure of Grayson and Cain. Notice, though, that many of these supposed solutions belie the same problems. Characters that pass as white. Characters created by beloved white writers. Characters related to beloved white characters, and characters not breaking the status quo. Then they're okay. This acceptability should not be accepted. Despite the early days of the Golden Age being extremely racist, comics have quickly become a haven for diversity, and are host to several artists of all walks of life telling interesting and unique stories that pull from their background. That's why comics thrive. Not because of a status quo, not because of interesting or exciting visuals or storylines, but because they pull from everybody. Diversity in comics is actually what makes comics great in the first place.